Oh, we are live. This is excellent.
All right.
All right. Welcome to the Inspired Money Podcast, where we explore positive money stories. I'm Andy, host and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. If you want to shift your perspectives on money and use your money for good to make a bigger impact, subscribe right now and hit the bell to get notifications of future videos. Today, we're talking with serial entrepreneur Bob Glazer. He founded and built a global $20 million business that's widely recognized as a best place to work. He writes a weekly inspirational newsletter called Friday Forward that reaches over 100,000 people across 50 countries. He's also a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and international bestselling author of 4 books. Bob, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Andy, thanks for having me.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
I think it was that I liked making it. I would do odd jobs. I would shovel. My first technical business was a Jolly Rancher reselling business where I was going and taking the train in Boston, which is the T, which is it's not a scary thing. It's like above ground. And I was buying them. I would bring them to school. I was reselling them. And then my grandmother found out about the operation, and she told me I could either tell my parents or shut it down. So faced with those two operations, alternatives, I shut it down.
A Jolly Rancher reselling business. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. I found out people would buy them for X in school, and I could go buy them from the store for Y. So I learned that. I learned margin early on.
Yeah, so you started entrepreneurship very early, it sounds like. You're CEO of Acceleration Partners in Boston. You rank number 2 on Glassdoor's list of top CEOs, of small and medium-sized companies in the US. How is it that you've become a capacity and performance expert?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little personal, story there. I think as we were growing the business, I realized, we were growing 30% a year for almost a decade, so we'd be doubling every couple of years, and I just saw things that worked and didn't work. And in a services business, that's often people. And what I realized was, we when I thought about it, we had an ability to invest in people holistically, work on building their capacity both inside and outside of work. And when we did that, we seemed to get the work benefit, and they seemed to get the benefit outside of work. So we designed a bunch of our training and stuff around this notion. I didn't have the words at the time, but it was capacity building, which ended up being the framework of my book, Elevate. It was also something that I realized as I started kind of leadership training and realized I was sort of not meeting my full potential. And I just saw these patterns of, how you do that and the process of actually how you get better, because you can keep training people and employees on sort of how you do your business and how to do it better. But if you're growing fast enough, they have to become better at sort of a higher level.
What has the sort of trend been at your company? Because I know that you have, I think, around 170 employees today.
Yeah.
At what stage of growth do you start looking at yourself and saying, I need leadership training, I need to make improvements to myself so that I can help to lead others better?
Look, it starts at the top, right? So I realized years ago, and this is the thing, I think some people found companies and they don't actually sit around to figure out eventually, do I like this job? I know I'm the CEO, but do I want this job? Do I like this job? I realized that if we were doubling every 2 to 3 years, like I would have to get twice as good or I wouldn't qualify for my job anymore. So that really became a motivating factor for me to understand I had to work on my own leadership, my own capacity building, and then I had to help my leaders do the same. Otherwise, you have an expiration date, right? I have a graph I built. If you think about, the demand curve of the company, what it needs here, and your ability to get better is below the demand curve, then you're going to work yourself out of a job. And a lot of people have worked themselves out of the job. Actually, a lot of people have worked it till they don't qualify for the job anymore, but they're still in the job, and that's also very dangerous.
So it sounds like growth is not really a choice. It's something that you have to do.
We are a growth company in a growth industry. I do believe that's a choice. You make a decision as a company, whether you're a growth company or not. Obviously, if you're a growth company, then people need to learn new and different things. If you're doing the company does the same thing every year over and over, you're not a growth company. You might need to do that, but there are also different risks for that. You wake up one day and there's a global pandemic and your business model is totally obsoleted.
Yeah, I guess I should rephrase the question. If you want to be a growth company, you have no choice.
You have no choice
as a leader to be growing as an individual too.
If I look at my leadership team, none of them 4 years ago would have qualified for the jobs that they had now. They have done the work. They have done the hard work, and they have realized that the bar for themselves is raising. And again, I think a lot of founders, this is but they actually don't want to be CEO as the company grows. They want to be marketing or sales or whatever it is that they did. I think they have a hard time dealing with the ego aspects of that and admitting that to themselves about what is the role they want to play within their own organization.
In your self-development, where you are today compared to where you began, how different a person are you?
I'm a different leader. I hope I'm not a different person. I think part of the challenge of becoming an authentic leader is to really develop a leadership style that is personal to who you are and aligned with your values. I think when we all start leading, we take a lot of best practices from other people. I mean, naturally, right? You see them and you try some of them on, and I say some of the sweaters don't fit, but we wear them, right? And you say, well, I saw Andy do this and I started doing this, but it doesn't feel right. It's just not me. So I think my leadership style has definitely changed because I've seen what works and doesn't work, but I've also gotten much more comfortable with saying, here are the things I'm going to do. Here's what I'm not going to do. Here's what I'm not going to change. And just about my leadership and the culture in the company. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're not going to do. Here's what we stand for. I don't think any leader is for everyone, and I don't think any company is for everyone. I think it's imperative around the company leader to say authentically who they are and what they value, and then let other people make the decision about whether that's the right fit for them.
Bob, you talked about core values, and I know that you kind of unintentionally built this massive email list with Friday Forward.
Yeah.
Was that part, like creating this email that you were sending out every Friday to your employees and then it grew, was like, how did core values fit into that?
So it's interesting. They fit into it not from starting it, because it started by accident. It started as a note to my team. It started about improving my morning routine and wanting to write something and think about something. But when it took off and it was taking off and it was taking more time and people in my company were like, well, why are you doing this? That's nothing to do with our business. I think what I realized, and I was probably right about the stage when I had started to articulate my own core values, but the decision to continue with it was core value based. I said, look, now that I understand my core values, this strikes all of them, which means that it's easy, it's fun, it feels good. So I don't know what it is or why it is, but like you should continue with things that are aligned to your core values. And what's come out of that is bringing so many employees to our company, leading to several books. Like it's been transformational for me personally and for the business. And again, I think this perfect example of if you understand your core values, it's rare that you will go wrong doing something very aligned with them. If you're asked to operate in disalignment for a long period of time, I think things tend to go off the rails pretty quickly.
So for you, what are your core values? How has that dictated what you've done? Because when I look at your biography, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, leading a 170-person company isn't enough for you? Like, where do you find the time?
All of these things actually align together on their values. So my values are find a better way and share it, and that's my dominant value. So part of the thing for me is when I figure out something that I think can improve leaders or companies or otherwise, I do feel compelled to share it because I think that's what makes the impact. Self-reliance, respectful authenticity, which ties to some frameworks of how we operate in our company, long-term orientation, and health and vitality. So all of the seemingly maybe sometimes just disjointed things that I do really fall under that umbrella and they drive each other, right? So finding, we're constantly trying to figure out a way to do something better in our company. We were virtual for 14 years. As we learned about a lot of those best practices and stuff, I very openly shared them in my writing and with other leaders because that to me is the value. Like why discover something if you can't, make something good out of it? So that's a perfect example of how that ties directly to a core value.
It's impressive that you're able to do the keynote speaking, do 4 books, write a weekly email newsletter that goes out to so many people while running a company that certainly is a growth company. You said that it's doubling every 2 to 3 years.
Well, that's some of that stuff forces you to have a good leadership team, right? I have systematically removed myself from many things in the company over the years. I mean, I understand I'm a founder. We have a president who's been with me for 9 years. He runs the day-to-day business. I really focus on the strategy and the culture and building our leadership team and the things that I really like to do and I'm best aligned with. And I've been happy to give up a lot of the other functions and responsibilities along the way and just find great people to execute on those.
I'm curious about the alignment that you talk about. It's identifying your core values, and then, your actions have to align with that, and things seem to then gel. But it hasn't always been easy for you, because you've also had times when you suffered a panic attack. Was that because, what happened there? And is that because things were out of alignment?
Yeah, I think I was, part of it is when you're just doing stuff and moving in a really quick direction that might actually not be enjoyable. It might just be exhausting you. And I think I was doing too many things, too many responsibilities. There was some personal stuff going on. This was in 2008, 2009, in the middle of all the chaos and starting a business. So yeah, I think we lose sight of what matters most. The way I like to picture core values is, imagine you have this beautiful car, $100,000 car, and you're driving it through a tunnel. And the tunnel is absolutely black, pitch black. You're going to hit a wall, grind against it, bounce off, hit the other wall. You're going to get through that tunnel, and your car is going to be pretty beat up. So that hitting that wall is like hitting the boundary of a core value. Most of us kind of get this feeling when we start hitting those walls, or when we're outside of a core value with a person or a decision or otherwise. We just can't articulate it. If you turn on the lights and you saw the lines and you saw the walls, you drive straight through without, making that. So this is the difference between the lights on and the lights off. I could just, when I'm doing some of the core value discovery stuff with our leaders, you can identify these times when their core values are violated because they feel uncomfortable. So that alignment is saying, look, I got to stay away from those things. I got to stay away from people, jobs, employers, bosses, other things that just conflict with my core values. And I got to double down on the stuff that is aligned, because that's the stuff that intrinsically makes me feel good and motivated. And my goals need to be aligned with my values as well, or else a lot of us have goals, I think, that come from other people's definition of success and outside perception about things that we need to do. And then we do them and we don't feel that great, right? You say we become a doctor, but you really wanted to be a writer in a cabin in Montana, but, come from a family of doctors where that was a pressure. So, when you're trying to meet other people's goals or societal's goals, it doesn't provide satisfaction. The same way money. I mean, what's the statistic? I think after $74,000 or something like that, money really doesn't make people happier, because if they don't know what it is they want to do with it or what they find enjoyment, then once the basic needs are covered, then it actually doesn't make them happier.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You mentioned that as a kid, you liked making money.
Yeah.
And you did get involved in Jolly Rancher reselling. You got involved in business and how to make money pretty early. How has that shifted for you as you've become a business leader of a larger company? Where does money and happiness, how do they fit together?
Yeah, well, one of my core values is self-reliance, right? So that was part of just this fierce independence of hey, I do something, I get an effort, there's a reward. And that's what I loved about it. I actually had to suppress that in the work environment, because as you build a team, you have to learn to be reliant on others. I think, we brought that to a different level, in that we were self-reliant as a company and trying to not be, dependent on other people or industries. But yeah, you have to shift that. And look, we've made the focus. We are not the highest paying person in the world. We want people who are engaged, who align with our values, who want to be here. We never get into bidding wars on talent. We never get into, we take sort of the Patriots approach to talent, which is a culture and a system you want to be from. We don't go after all the expensive free agents, because I believe if the person takes the job just because you're the highest bidder, they're going to leave for another job if someone's the highest bidder. We want people who want something more holistic out of work. And so, yeah, I think I've had to, evolve and change there, and particularly around the self-reliance of learning to let go. But I've always made sure we're profitable. We've always been conservative, even as a growth business, because we never wanted to be. That's where the self-reliance shifted. We never wanted to be dependent on, losing money and be dependent on having to raise money to stay in business. I think those are the sort of cultural things that have stayed with me as we built the business.
When you look at core values, does it have to include like certain categories? Since the self-reliance that you mentioned for yourself, that includes financial, but what are the different, or are there different areas that you have to make sure that are included?
No, personal core values they're things that probably, if you go back, and I've had this experience, and read your report cards, from a kid, they are themes and things that were consistent for you from a young age. They also come from very formative experiences, like good or bad as a kid. As the more I get into it, people, you can see that the reason why X is important to them is because it either happened or didn't happen at some key point in their childhood. So I think these things are more holistic. Like, what is it that you value? What drives you? What is the antithesis that's just really uncomfortable, for you? One of the tests of a personal core value is sort of the opposite test, right? Because if it's a value, then if someone violates the value, it shouldn't feel good. So when someone circles around a value of like gratitude and giving, and that's just core to them, I'll say, well, how does it feel for you if you're at a party and you're talking to this person, this guy Andy comes up to you and he's complaining about not getting a distribution from his trust fund, and he's talking all about himself and his need, and you can see the look on their face. They get like uncomfortable because like you're kind of kryptonite. In that case, you represent the opposite attributes of their value. So it is not going to work well for someone who has gratitude as a value to be connected with someone who is super, selfish and self-focused and doesn't care about others at all.
It sounds important to know oneself and to really understand oneself. These are often things that I don't think that you're taught in school. These are like life lessons. How do you build that into teaching or developing that with your leadership team, or even looking at an employee and trying to identify what is this person's core values? How do you build that into like a hiring process?
Yeah, so I'd be very careful to do anything like this around hiring. So 10,000 square feet. We have company core values. Those represent the collective things we value as a company. We have behavioral-based interview questions against the company core values. So that's how we make sure that someone fits the company core values, which should tie to what they believe in personally, right? Like if they're not a learner and your company values learning and growing, you can ask them questions about what they're reading or courses, and you'll find out they haven't taken any, right? So that is one aspect. I got frustrated. When I figured out my core values, I had to sort of find a bunch of stuff and build the process. As we did our own leadership development programs at Acceleration Partners, I built a curriculum that replicated that process for other people. And then after 3 or 4 classes, got it pretty good. So we dedicate a half day to helping leaders find their personal core values, because they need to go back to their team and explain that. A great example, a couple of people have clearly had core values of trust, like really important to them. Their team didn't know that. They didn't even know that. Like they couldn't articulate that was a core value. And I'd say to these people after seeing it a couple of times, so let me ask you, when someone on your team is like 5 minutes late or misses the deadline, like how does that go over with you? And they're like, oh, they're kind of in my penalty box and like really hard to get out, because those are small things that are actually showing that person is not trustworthy, and trust is like critical to this person. So after they went through this program, which I then created into the course and made it available to everyone, after I felt like it really worked, they'd go back to their team and say, here are my core values and here what's important to me. So they'd say, trust is really important to me. And when these things happen, you're going to lose my trust, and then we're going to have a hard relationship. And when they sort of laid out their playbook for their employees, like the score as a manager went up, the 360s went up. Like it's like speaking the kind of business love language of saying like, here's what I need and here's how you can kind of work with me better. So they actually each went and presented their personal core values to the team. And I think it helped them gain confidence as a leader and saying, look, trust is always going to be important to me. So I'm going to start setting that expectation with people up front. And I'm going to let them know they can trust me and I can trust them. But then, there's a very little gray area for that trust to be broken.
You did something really cool at your company that had to do with one last talk.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because I thought that was really cool, because it seemed like it just opened up a deeper communication among employees?
Yeah, so we've been virtual our entire existence, 14 years, but we have when there's not a global pandemic, we have a event called AP Summit where everyone comes together for 3 or 4 days, and we have a really great kind of learning event. And we do something different each year, and it always ties to one of our core values, the theme. And so that year was Embrace Relationships. We had some employee TED Talks the year before, where people got up there and told stories and things that they hadn't really shared before. But I learned about this guy, Philip McKernan, who had this initiative called One Last Talk. And One Last Talk is what is the talk that you need to give if you were leaving the world tomorrow? And Philip's the type of person who does not let you get away with the 3 tips to a successful life. Like, these are very deeply personal. What is your story? What have you not shared with people? Like, what's driving you? So we decided we'd try it. We run it at our event. We asked for volunteers. We had 8. I thought we'd have none. And 4 people ultimately whittled it down to 4. They were coached by Philip. They got up there. They gave these deeply personal one last talks that they prepared and rehearsed for 2 months in front of 160 people. There were not a lot of dry eyes in the room when these things were done. And I mean, the impact of that was incredible. But over the next 2 days of this event, it was like everyone just dropped their guard and was sharing unbelievable. We actually had a hard time putting the genie back in the bottle after a while. Like, people were sharing so deeply. They were people they'd worked with for 5 years that they had never had a personal discussion with about stuff outside of work. And you could just see after these employees kind of modeled vulnerability, what that did for the rest of the organization.
And as the leader, you didn't have to participate and give one last talk of your own?
I did not. I wanted to give the opportunities to employees, and it was pretty cathartic for them. I've shared a lot of my story and pieces of it, and so it wouldn't have been as new for other people.
You're putting out your stories in a weekly newsletter,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's all out there already. You were ahead of the curve on working remotely. I mean, you were probably 13 years ahead. Yeah. By the time the pandemic hit.
Too early. We used to say something we used to hide, and then I was getting asked to speak and write books on it. So that was an interesting shift.
As we look to brighter days where businesses start returning to work, what do you see for corporate America? Like, what's permanent? What is different? And does it have to be all or nothing working remotely? Can there be a hybrid or not?
So, great question. And I think some people assume that we've been remote, that I'm a blow up the offices, there won't be any offices, but that is not my belief. I do think that the workforce in general, a lot of companies that said it would never work, they've seen it work. It might not be ideal. So I think employees in general out of this are seeing the value of flexibility, and they realize the value of that. So that's going to be something that the workforce is looking for. I think the most important thing now is companies pretty soon need to declare their position. So either, we are returning to the office, and they might have a lot of other people that don't want to do that, full time. We're ditching the office because we like saving the money, and they might have a bunch of people that are looking to come back. Or this hybrid bucket actually worries me the most. So I think hybrid as the absence of a strategy could be a disaster, because you'll say, oh, you can do what you want, and then there'll be all kinds of subcultures and norms, and people realize that the people that go in on Wednesdays and have lunch with Andy seem to be getting the better projects. So I think hybrid can work, but it needs to be a very intentional strategy. Here is how we're doing it. It means that you can do whatever you want. The office is hoteling. We're all meeting on Wednesdays. These meetings are on Zoom. These meetings are in person. Like, I just think you need to be really intentional what the system are. So I don't think a company can go wrong. I just think they have to declare the strategy, support the strategy, realize that maybe a third of their employees might not be on board for the strategy, and they better know that now. You might have an employee that moved 2 hours away, and so they ain't going back into the office, right? When you open it up, and just have some honest dialogue, because I think it's better for you to tell people the truth and lose a certain percentage of the people than try to tell some story that seems to appeal to everyone. But look, I think that if you're requiring everyone to go back in 5 days a week, kind of permanently, I think you should understand that may be divergent from what a lot of the workforce is looking for.
What are some of the things that you learned early on, since you have 14 years experience of managing and building successful teams working remotely? Because That's in contrast to many businesses who were forced to work remotely, not by choice.
Yeah, these are not ideal situations for the employee. People have their kids at home. They can't go outside. They can't travel. So these are not ideal work from home circumstances. But yeah, a couple of things we learned a long time ago. One, people can be equally or more productive at home. There's I think the whole modern open office experiment has been statistically debunked, that people are distracted all day long. They're wearing noise canceling headphones because they can't get any work done. And so that's kind of been a disaster, the fully open office. I think the concept of getting rid of executive offices and moving more to glass and all that stuff was okay, but just putting everyone in a bullpen is not a productive way to work. It takes like something like 18 minutes to reset yourself after you've been distracted from a task, and those environments are all about distraction. I think there was a misperception that people at home slacked off and didn't work. I think what people are finding is that actually people at home, work from home, oftentimes can't draw boundaries and work too much. So that's one of the biggest challenges is creating some space, but either psychologically or physically, for your work day and your home space, or else it all starts to bleed together. So that's something we had coached employees on for a long time and worked on. And the other thing is, like, you need to be a lot more intentional on everything. Like I always say, I thought we had a world-class onboarding program because we had to. You can't show up at your computer and have nothing to do on the first day versus you come in the office and someone says, "Hey, Andy, we forgot you were starting today, but go follow Bob, go shout him." Like, that's not an onboarding program either. So like, we script out the first 2 to 3 weeks, entire onboarding from day one. That's how great companies do it in the office too. You don't start your job. You go into the 3 weeks of training and rotation. So I just think it actually forces you to be deliberate in a lot of areas where you didn't have to be, because you could get away with it, in an office environment.
And how important is your annual summit where you bring everybody together? Does that become even more essential?
Yeah, it's been hard. We had to do it virtually, but that time to go deep and to sort of step away from work and to get to know people. We might doing some event together. We had a great group that came and ran us through these sort of military leadership exercises, a few years ago, and I just might get to have a discussion with you or in a way that we never connected before. And so, yeah, I think that's really important to resetting, getting everyone together, reminding them that they all work for the company. We also do hub meetings in our hub cities twice a year and connect with everyone. So yeah, our teams are actually together a lot. We're in client service, so they're out meeting with clients. They operate in like pods, groups of 8. I would say it's a little bit similar to the military, where you have an organization and ethos, but you kind of operate with your core platoon, right, 90% of the time, and that's a lot of your experience.
For context, tell us how your offices are set up geographically and where employees are.
Yeah, so we don't have offices, but we have hub cities so that people can get together. We can have social events. We can do local hiring. So we have about 7 or 8 hubs, which we define as a concentration of 10 or more employees. And we really focus hiring around those areas. One of the things that I just wrote an Inc. article about that is going to come out in this, companies that are telling employees that they can work from anywhere do not realize what a legal and accounting disaster that this is going to be. They're saying this, and then I got panic texts last night from a CEO. I got a panic call from another CEO a few weeks ago about this. They're realizing, like, crap, our employees are moving to all these places, and now we have to register in these states, and we owe taxes, and so this is one of the reasons why we've had the hub strategy. So our employees are remote, but we are very specific about where they can work permanently. People travel and go somewhere for 90 days. That's fine. But let's just say an employee goes and works from London. You might have to set up an entity there. You might have to set up benefits. You might have to contribute to a pension. Then they go, oh, you know what? I want to go to Spain for a year. Like, you can't just work remotely from these places. You have to be registered. So this stuff has like big implications for companies that they are only learning to discover now as employees start to actually work from anywhere.
Is that something that you had to learn along the way?
Yes. We learned that the hard way. We always worked with a PEO because it helped alleviate that. But we realized early on, like, how can a company of 50 people navigate all of this? Like, it just becomes extremely complex and paperwork and costs. And so, yeah, we realized early on when we developed our hub strategy that we were not going to let employees work from anywhere.
So you can't just pick up and head to the beach somewhere on the other
You
side of the world.
can, right? But it just mean for your company might have to then actually set you up legally there to do business, which is both expensive and has a lot of headaches in it. And then if they do that, are you making the commitment that you're reimbursing them, that you're not leaving there? Like there are a lot of questions to be answered.
For a manager, what kind of mind shift or mindset shifts does it require
Yeah.
to be a good manager to a remote team that you're not seeing every day, coming into my office and sitting down at my desk?
Two things managers have to do, and I talk about this in the book. So first is you got to change your communication strategy. You got to communicate probably more upfront, be clear, like you're not going to see them every day, get that down. Two is they have to shift from managing inputs to outcomes. They need to get more comfortable with the right outcome metrics to manage their employees. Like seeing them 8 hours in a chair used to be an input metric. We understand this in sales, right? We know that like we value the salesperson who sells $10,000 in a day and maybe made 2 calls versus the one who made 100 calls and sells nothing. But I think other leaders are having to figure out what are the outcomes that I can manage, the expectations, hold people accountable, and have the right check-in points. But I can't be up in their business all day long, so I need to change my lens on that.
How has the COVID pandemic impacted your business? Is it a way? I mean, I'm talking about like operationally, because is it a matter of just saying, oh, we've been doing this for a long time, it didn't impact us at all? Or has it shaped some of the ways that you've been working with your team and managing them?
I actually think it's been more net negative for our business, which would be a surprise because our culture was about autonomy and flexibility. And, when COVID, and that's a lot of reasons. So a lot of the people who value remote work are parents of young kids, who need that flexibility, not during the day, but at 8 a.m. or 5 p.m., to be there for pickup or drop off. So in that way, people lost all their flexibility that they really had, built a life around. Oh, well, I don't go to work, but I go to SoulCycle at 12 o'clock, or I can pick up my kids at 5. And now their kids are having school behind them and screaming, and they can't leave the house. So I actually think it made remote work more challenging for our team who was used to a different type of remote work. I think other people don't know from it, and suddenly they're like, oh, I don't have a commute, and they like the benefits. But our employees were really clear about the trade-offs, and they lost a lot of the benefits. So I actually think it's made it harder for us. Everyone would think we would have an advantage. Yes, we had all the operational systems and all that stuff, but we also had a lot of employees with young kids, and I think that was the demographic that just has been, had the hardest lift for, the first 6 to 9 months with daycares closed and schools closed and all that stuff.
And you have some views on how this pandemic may impact employees as we come out of it. Like, it's been such a significant life event for everyone. People may be looking for changes just because they're looking for something different. Like they need to get out of their house. They need to do something different.
Yeah. The data says that, we have a particularly younger workforce that, 2 years is a good tour of duty these days anyway. And the data says that 40% of people are looking for jobs now. I think that it's similar to kind of like a company has multiple rounds of layoffs, right? Someone can come in after those layoffs without any of the historical baggage and do really well. The person that's been there for 3 kind of never really recovers. I think there are companies that did all the things right, in the last year, and there were companies that didn't. But it's been a traumatic experience for employees, having their kids at home, working stress. I think they're going to associate that with their job, even though the stress was not coming from their job, and they're going to look for a change. So I think companies should expect higher turnover, and there's benefits and pros of that. Like but you're also going to have people coming into your company. Like, we think we have a pretty good culture. We think we treated people well, but we know that some people want to do different things. But we have people coming in right now who were treated terribly during it and said, I don't want to ever be at a company like that again during a bad time where they're not good people. So in that way, like, the people that are coming in are extraordinary, and they're excited to be here. And if they're people that want to do other things, like, we can't stop that. So yeah, I think turnover is just going to be higher across the board. I think people just feel like the need for change, and that is one of the things that they can change in their life.
Bob, when you have a 100% virtual work environment, How difficult is it to define that culture and to maintain the culture?
I mean, we're very intentional about it, and our environment is built around the culture. We think the core values and how we align people to those are one of the reasons why our culture works. Again, we find people who value, they're accountable, but they value flexibility. So it's kind of one and the same for us. I think it is. There is a specific foundation and a specific type of person that we think works well in this environment. We think it's about, I mean, the data would tell you it's about 1.7% of people. That's kind of our hiring acceptance rate. So we don't think our environment and our culture is for everyone. Our job is to find people that really align to that and who are looking for the value proposition that we offer. I often use the analogy of universities, right? Think about like there's a very different value proposition for a Michigan, right? A large city school, a campus school, a sports school, than a small liberal arts school. They're both great schools for the right people. But I would argue that someone at a 400-person class school in Maine probably would not like a school like Michigan, or vice versa. They're looking for different value propositions.
That makes sense. You mentioned that you do have a lot of young people working at your company. You wrote an article entitled COVID-19 Will Permanently Change Life for Millennials and Gen Z. Here's how to adjust. Can you talk about that article and sort of what trends you see going forward?
Yeah, I mean, there were a bunch of different things, right? I think that I went backwards in terms of, I think, the older generation coming online, going digital, doing things they hadn't done before. I think a lot of Gen X leaders are going through their third major catastrophe in their career, and might not want to be around for the fourth. They might want to get into coaching or something other than that. I think about, I mean, I started my work career started right in '98, so I had the dot-com boom, then we had the Great Recession, then this. It's almost once a decade. I haven't had a garden variety recession in my work career. It's been 3 kind of booms and 3 busts basically at this point. And look, this remains to be seen because there's a lot of shifting now. But I think the notion of like, look, you just gave 1 day's notice and there was really no loyalty at all. Companies weren't loyal, employees weren't loyal. And then when job markets get difficult or things get tough, I think people see that worked. It's kind of like a game of musical chairs, right? And it works as long as keep moving. But now when it's not as easy of a job market and you burned your bridges at 10 jobs in a row, I think you might really rethink how you approach that and start to not focus on optimizing every situation, but develop relationships and value loyalty. I mean, people have just been willing to switch jobs for $1,000 more, in a hot market. But I think people will reevaluate some of the other aspects of if they're just not getting the raise they want or not getting the title change or something, that the answer is always not just to keep just changing jobs and giving short notice and burning a bridge. Like the people that are going to do well in a tougher environment have deep and loyal networks that they can call upon.
As a CEO, how do you communicate some of those other values to retain employees so that it's not about $1,000?
Yeah, I mean, we really focus on the whole picture, and we also make it clear, like, we don't match offers. Like, if it's really about money, you want to leave. But we try to focus on the entire value proposition, that holistic that we can offer people, the training we can offer them, the leadership training, the development, the opportunity. If that's what's exciting to people, then they stay. Like I said, if they're always just going to leave for a higher offer, we're not going to be the highest payer. Like, we pay very well. We try to be in the top threshold. But I don't think you want to be the highest payer. To me, that's the team that just keeps signing all the expensive free agents and has no cohesiveness, and then there's not a team. So we'll continue to focus on the entire value proposition and focus on retaining the right people, incentivizing them for the long term, not necessarily the short term.
Bob, in terms of money, it's not just about making money; it's also about giving money and trying to help others in need. Can you talk a little bit about how that fits into your core values?
Yeah, I think both personally, we focused on that with our family. We've made giving both, the act of giving and donations important, and something that we involve our kids with and that we do. We took our family down to Puerto Rico after the hurricane and volunteered a few years ago, and just, I mean, it was eye-opening, the devastation down there, and for our kids to see kind of what that looked like. And then we've also tied that, into our company. We give a percentage of our profit every year back to initiatives. We try to pick initiatives that align to our core values. Our employees get involved. We try not to be check writers, but doers. So we've coordinated mattresses with our mattress clients years ago, got those down to people in Puerto Rico. We've done sponsorships with a client called Rustic Pathways to send youth on trips that they couldn't afford around the world, kind of help their personal development. We've worked with organizations like Build on helping to improve equity, in high school and support entrepreneurship. So we really pick things that align with our values, even where we can get our clients and our partners involved, and where we can contribute in addition to being a check writer.
I love that. How does that make you feel?
Great. I mean, we try to tie that into, for our employees, again, why do we want to be profitable as a business? We want to be safe. We want to be secure. We want the business to have value. We want to be able to contribute. I think that all goes into the value proposition of how a company can contribute on multiple levels. And just making it attracts people who are interested more in purpose and in more things that are collective than about optimizing for themselves.
Bob, I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
That's a great question. So success to me is the attainment of I like achievement more than success. As I said before, I think success a lot of times has an external barometer, not an internal one. So to me, true success or achievement is the level of attainment to the things that are most important to you.
I like that. So can you tell the Inspired Money listener where to follow you? I know that you have a course on core values, so share with everyone how they can follow you and learn more.
Sure. You can find everything at robertglazer.com, glazer.com. There's my books, Friday Forward, the course, and otherwise. And quick, a cheat way to get to the course is corevaluescourse.com. Actually, if you use code Inspired Money, you can get $30 off the course for the next month. So check it out. It's only $79 normally. If you're willing to take the time to do that work, I promise it's fundamentally changing. The course is an hour, but the work is not an hour, but it will get you started on the right path. So that's corevaluescourse.com.
Cool. We'll check it out. Certainly, I think based on the discussion today, very important to identify what your core values are and set yourself on the right course.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah.
All right.
See what I did there?
Thanks very much, Andy.